You reply to texts instantly. You drop your plans the moment they need you. You offer unconditional loyalty, endless patience, bottomless generosity, because somewhere deep inside, you still believe human beings reward goodness with goodness. And yet, week after week, year after year, you watch those same people hand their respect, their love, their obsession to someone who treats them like garbage. You've been brainwashed into believing that the more you give, the more you're worth. That every sacrifice, every late reply answered instantly, every ounce of over-availability, deposits something valuable into your account with the people around you. It's the biggest lie ever sold to the human mind. Your endless availability doesn't make you valuable. It makes you psychologically worthless in their eyes. You're water. They want gold. And gold is rare. So if you're finally done being a stepping stone for the ungrateful, if you're done pouring yourself into people who pour back nothing, don't click away. I'm going to walk you through Carl Jung's dark psychology of the shadow and show you the forbidden art of weaponized withholding, the exact psychological mechanism that turns you from an option into an obsession. Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol or morphine or idealism, and there is no addiction more dangerous to the soul than the addiction to the approval of others. Carl Jung wasn't writing poetry there. He was writing a diagnosis, and the patient, whether you want to admit it or not, is you. Every time you've checked your phone waiting for a reply that didn't come, every time you've rearranged your life around someone who wouldn't rearrange 5 minutes around you, every time you've performed, softened, accommodated, and over-delivered, hoping it would translate into love, that was the addiction running. That was the narcotic Jung warned about, working through your system. And here's the forbidden question nobody in your life will ever answer for you. Why do human beings become obsessed with the very people who treat them like they don't matter? It's the single most important question you can ask if you ever want to stop being tossed aside for people who do nothing to deserve what you bleed for. And the answer isn't what you think. It isn't that those people are better. It isn't that they're more attractive. It isn't that they have some secret charisma. It's a specific neurological loop that's been running in the human brain for 50,000 years, and you've been shutting it off every time you've been kind. Human beings don't value what is given. They value what they have to bleed to earn. And you've been giving yourself away at zero cost, for free, in unlimited supply. And the brutal, unforgiving social market has been pricing you exactly the way any abundant resource gets priced, at nothing. But that ends today. Today you learn what Carl Jung understood when he spent his life mapping the dark chambers of the human mind. You learn the mechanism of shadow work, the real psychology of intermittent reinforcement, the dopamine architecture underneath every obsession that has ever existed, and how to stop feeding it away and start commanding it. By the end of this video, you'll understand power dynamics at a level 99% of people will live their entire lives never accessing. You'll have the manipulation defense that makes you unreachable to the ones who've been draining you. And you'll walk away with a psychological operating system where your approval, your warmth, your attention become the rarest currencies in the rooms you walk into, the phantom currencies, the ones people fight to earn. If these ideas resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more top-tier content. Also, drop a star of them in the comments so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. Your over-availability isn't generosity, it isn't loyalty, it isn't love. It's a trauma response wearing the costume of a virtue. Read that again slowly. Your compulsive need to be there for people, to reply instantly, to fix things, to make yourself indispensable. That isn't coming from a place of strength. It's coming from an unresolved terror of being abandoned. And every time you act on it, you don't build connection. You broadcast desperation. Your unconditional love is secretly just your terror of being left behind. I know that hurts. I know it isn't what you wanted to hear. But you came to this video because you already suspected it. You already sensed that something in your pattern of giving was pushing people away instead of pulling them in. Now you're getting the dark psychology underneath it. Think about it this way. When something is abundant, the human brain files it as low value: air, water, sunlight. We take these things for granted because they're always there. The moment any of them becomes scarce, the brain lights up like a Christmas tree. Suddenly, that one glass of water in the desert is worth more than every luxury you've ever owned. The value didn't come from the water. The value came from the scarcity. Now apply that to you, to your presence, to your attention, to your emotional availability. You've made yourself the air in other people's lives, always there, always free, always replenishable. And the human brain, the indifferent, value-calculating machine sitting inside every skull you interact with, has priced you accordingly. At zero. Not because you're worth zero, but because abundance is priced at zero. Always. If you're always the one reaching out, you've already signaled that your time is worthless. You haven't said a single word about your value. Your behavior has screamed it at them, and they've listened, and they've adjusted. This isn't cruelty. It isn't personal. It's how power dynamics work at the neurochemical level in every human relationship since the dawn of our species. And it's exactly what Carl Jung was pointing to when he talked about the addiction to approval. Because when you're trapped in that addiction, you become incapable of doing the one thing that would actually generate the approval you crave: restraint, withholding, strategic absence. You can't simultaneously chase someone and be valued by them. It's neurologically impossible. The chase itself destroys the value. Every text you send that goes unanswered and you follow up anyway, that collapses your value. Every invitation you extend that gets declined and you extend again, that collapses your value. Every time you swallow your hurt and show up smiling the next day, that collapses your value. You aren't building the relationship. You're liquidating yourself inside it. And the darkest part, the people who benefit from your endless availability, whether they realize it consciously or not, have a vested interest in keeping you exactly where you are, in keeping you chasing, in keeping you eager. Because a person who is always chasing is a person who never demands anything. A person who never demands anything is a person who can be exploited indefinitely. Your overavailability isn't just costing you respect. It's actively enabling the very disrespect you're trying to cure with more availability. It's the most vicious loop in dark psychology, and you've been running it on yourself. Stop trying to be their safe harbor. Start being the storm they have to navigate. I know what you're thinking. Okay, so I need to pull back. I need to be less available. But if I just disappear, won't they replace me? Won't they forget me entirely? That fear is the conditioning talking. And it's wrong, because simply ghosting people is an amateur move. It's reactive, it's emotional. It leaks the very desperation you're trying to hide. The real art of withholding, the Jungian, surgical form of it, is darker than that, and it starts with understanding the mechanism underneath. There's a psychological mechanism that every casino on Earth is built around. Every dating app algorithm exploits it. Every social media platform has weaponized it to hold billions of people hostage. It's called intermittent reinforcement. Once you see it, you can't unsee it in your relationships. Here's how it works. When a reward is given consistently, every time predictably, the brain stops caring. It becomes expected. Background noise. But when a reward is given unpredictably, sometimes yes, sometimes no, sometimes now, sometimes later, the brain loses its mind. Dopamine floods the system. The person becomes obsessed. They check compulsively. They think about it constantly. They will spend hours, days, years chasing a reward they would have ignored if it had been offered on a schedule. It's why people get addicted to slot machines and not to vending machines. Vending machines are predictable. Put in money, get soda. The brain files it under boring. Slot machines are intermittent. You might win, you might not. You might win big. And that uncertainty creates the most addictive neurochemical signature in human experience. The same mechanism governs human attention, human affection, human approval. When you withhold your validation, you force their brain to secrete the dopamine of the chase. You want to know why the person who treats them badly has them wrapped around their finger. It isn't charm, it isn't mystery, it's math. That person is providing attention on an unpredictable schedule. Some days warm, some days cold, sometimes replying instantly, sometimes disappearing for 3 days, and every time the warmth returns, the brain gets a dopamine hit big enough to override logic, self-respect, even the memory of the mistreatment. That's the chemistry of obsession. That's why bad people get worshipped while good people get forgotten. You've been running the opposite program. Consistent, reliable, predictable validation, which the brain files as vending machine affection, useful, convenient, unworthy of obsession. I'm not telling you to mistreat people. I'm not telling you to play games. I'm telling you something much more important. Your behavior has been broadcasting that you're always available, always warm, always accessible. And that predictability by itself is what's made you forgettable. The cure isn't cruelty. The cure is authentic scarcity. And authentic scarcity comes from one place and one place only. It comes from actually valuing your own time, your own energy, and your own emotional availability enough to stop handing them out for free. It comes from building a life so full, so dense with your own purpose and your own interests, that your attention genuinely becomes a limited resource, not performed, real. When you do that, when you become someone whose time costs something, a strange thing happens. You stop needing to chase anyone, and people start chasing you, not because you tricked them, because the market finally priced you correctly. Imagine what your life looks like when your response time goes from instant to considered, when your availability goes from 24/7 to by appointment, when your emotional investment goes from unconditional to earned. Imagine the quiet panic that builds in the people who had been lazily collecting your attention for free, the texts that suddenly start getting longer, the invitations that start coming more often, the effort that, for the first time, is being made by them instead of you. That isn't manipulation, that's correction. That's the natural market repricing a resource that was being given away at a fraction of its value. I'm about to show you the exact neurological loop casinos use to addict gamblers, and how that same principle, deployed through your own authentic self-respect, becomes the foundation of every high-value relationship you'll ever have. But before you can execute any of this in the real world, something has to happen inside you first. Every ounce of guilt you feel right now, every part of you whispering, "But that feels mean, that feels manipulative, that's not who I am," is the exact thing that will sabotage this whole transformation. That's where Jung comes in, because Jung understood something about the guilt you're feeling that you need to hear. Carl Jung spent his career studying one thing above all others. He studied the parts of the psyche that human beings refuse to acknowledge. He called this region the shadow, and he made a discovery that modern self-help will never tell you, because modern self-help is obsessed with being palatable. Jung's discovery was this: the parts of yourself you reject don't disappear, they don't dissolve, they don't go away, they go underground, and from underground, they run your life without your consent. Every trait you were taught was bad. Your anger, your selfishness, your capacity for coldness, your willingness to say no, your appetite for power, your ability to cut people off, your instinct to withhold, those traits didn't vanish when you were told they were wrong. They were buried, alive, in the shadow. And they've been sabotaging you from there ever since. Here's what it looks like in practice. You try to pull back from someone who's been using you, and suddenly you can't. A wave of guilt crashes over you, a fear of being a bad person, an anxiety that you'll be seen as cold. That isn't your soul talking. That's your repressed shadow screaming. Because you've never been permitted to use the very traits you need right now to protect yourself. You don't know how to be cold because you've spent 30 years proving you're not. You don't know how to withhold because you've spent 30 years proving you can be relied upon. The muscle is atrophied, and when you try to flex it, every nerve in your conditioned mind fires in protest. Carl Jung knew that a person who cannot access their own capacity for hardness can never be genuinely respected. Be careful how you read that. Jung wasn't saying be cruel, he was saying you have to be able to access the capacity for hardness within yourself, or else your softness isn't a choice. It's a default, and defaults get exploited. A person who can't say no has no real yes. A person who can't withhold has no real giving. A person who can't walk away has no real reason anyone should value them staying. Your kindness is only meaningful when it's a decision made by someone who had other options. Right now, for most of you watching this, kindness isn't a decision. It's the only move you know how to make. That isn't virtue. That's limitation. And limitations get exploited mercilessly by anyone paying attention. Here's what Jungian shadow work demands. You have to go down into the shadow. You have to reach into the parts of yourself you were taught to fear, and you have to retrieve your capacity for strategic coldness, your capacity for refusal, your capacity for withholding. Not to destroy the kind person you are, but to give that kind person teeth. Because kindness without teeth isn't kindness. It's submission wearing a pleasant mask. If you feel guilty for pulling back, you're still trapped in the matrix. And the way out is something you might not want to hear. The guilt you feel when you withdraw your over-availability isn't morality. It's withdrawal symptoms. The same way a smoker feels anxious without a cigarette, you feel guilty without giving yourself away. Because your identity has been fused with your servitude. When you start reclaiming your energy, a part of you panics. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because the addiction is losing its supply. That guilt isn't your conscience. That guilt is the chain rattling on your ankle as you try to walk away. The only way through it is to keep walking, to keep withholding, to keep choosing yourself, until your nervous system finally recalibrates and realizes the sky didn't fall, the world didn't end, the people who were meant to stay adjusted to your new gravity, and the ones who weren't exposed themselves for what they always were. That's shadow integration in real life. That's Carl Jung's dark psychology applied. Not reading about the shadow, living it, walking out of your trained helplessness and into the full range of what a complete human being is capable of, including the parts they told you were forbidden. Knowing this isn't enough, knowing isn't executing. What separates the person who understands Jung from the person who becomes unrecognizable through him is a single specific technique. And that's what I'm going to hand you. Everything we've built so far lands here, in the one specific technique that will reconfigure every relationship in your life faster than you can believe. I call it the fractional response. Here's how it works, and the nuance is where the power lives. For most of your life, your responses to the people around you have been full spectrum. When they text, you write a paragraph. When they call, you answer with enthusiasm. When they share something, you engage with depth, curiosity, emotional investment. You give the whole of yourself in every interaction, and that wholeness, Cassie, while it feels like love, is a big part of why you aren't valued. Because you've made your whole self so reliably available that there's nothing left to earn. The fractional response reverses it. Instead of giving them 100%, you give them a fraction, sometimes 10%, sometimes 30%. Occasionally, only occasionally, a glimpse of the 100. Not to punish them, to reprice yourself in their mind. What does it look like in practice? They text you something that would have gotten a paragraph. You send back a single sentence, maybe 2 words. Not cold, not rude, just brief. They try to engage more. You stay brief. Their brain starts registering that something has shifted. They escalate. They send a longer message. They bring more energy. And maybe you match their increased investment with a slightly fuller response. Then you pull back again. You see what's happening there? You're no longer the source. They're the pursuer. You're making them work for depth. The second they have to work for depth, depth becomes the prize. This is the same neurological loop casinos use, translated into your daily life. Unpredictable reward, variable reinforcement, the uncertainty that creates obsession. You aren't being cruel, you're being scarce. And scarcity, authentic, self-respecting scarcity, is one of the most attractive traits a human being can project. A warning, though, because 99% of people who try this fail at the same step. The mistake they make is faking the scarcity. They pretend to be busy. They pretend their schedule is full. They perform unavailability. And performance always leaks. Other people feel fake scarcity within hours. They sense the effort. They sense the game. Then they lose respect for you entirely because now you aren't just available, you're insecure and pretending not to be. That's worse than where you started. The only way it works is if the scarcity is real. If your time actually is worth something because you're actually doing something with it. If your attention actually is limited because you've actually built a life that commands it. The fractional response isn't a trick you deploy on other people. It's the natural byproduct of someone who has reclaimed their own life so thoroughly that they can't physically give themselves away the way they used to. Watch how fast the power dynamic shifts when you deploy this correctly. Because the moment you become authentically scarce, not performing scarcity but living it, the people who had been taking you for granted will feel something they haven't felt in years. The absence of your warmth. And that absence for them will feel like withdrawal, because neurologically it is. The roles invert. They become the one checking. They become the one waiting. They become the one analyzing every message for signs of your favor returning. Not because you manipulated them, because you finally stopped over-functioning in a relationship where they were never going to match your effort. The emotional detachment you're building isn't coldness. It's recalibration. It's the correction of a market that was pricing you wrong for years because you were pricing yourself wrong. And once that correction happens, once the market sees your true scarcity, the value returns. Automatically, inevitably, like water finding its level. This is also where the fractional response becomes the most efficient form of manipulation defense you'll ever use. It doesn't just restore your value in existing relationships, it screens new people instantly. The ones who were only there for what you provided freely will fade away the moment the provision stops. You'll feel a moment of panic, that fear that they're walking away. Don't chase, don't explain, let them go. Anyone who disappears the second you stop overgiving was never your ally. They were your exploiter. The fractional response has just done you the greatest favor of your life by filtering them out without you lifting a finger. The ones who stay, the ones who adjust, who step up, who match your new energy, those are the ones worth keeping. Those are the ones the fractional response reveals, and those are the ones who, from now on, will treat you the way you've always deserved to be treated. But what happens when you pull back and they just walk away entirely? When the fractional response doesn't pull them closer, but drives them out of your life? That possibility is what terrifies most people into staying trapped. And that brings us to Jung's concept of what I call the true mirror. Let me address the fear first. The fear that when you pull back, people will just leave. Some of them will, and that's the point. Jung's concept of the true mirror is this. The people in your life aren't reflecting who you are. They're reflecting who you've been performing as. When you stop performing, when you stop overgiving, over-explaining, over-accommodating, the mirror shatters. And what's on the other side of that shattered mirror is the truth of who those people actually are, without the performance propping up the illusion. The ones who are using you will leave, because without your overgiving, you're no longer useful to them, and their departure isn't a loss, it's an exorcism. You're losing a parasite, not a partner. Let it go. Let every single one of them walk. That's what it means to let the world starve for your energy. The Phantom Protocol is the full integration of everything we've built. It's the operating system of someone who has fully transitioned from over-available martyr to withheld sovereign. Here's what it looks like in practice. Your response time is no longer reflexive. Someone messages you. You see it. You don't respond instantly. Not because you're playing a game, because your time is genuinely occupied with things that matter to you. When you do respond, you respond briefly, with precision. You say what needs to be said and nothing more. You leave the emotional expansion for later, if they earn it. Your presence becomes occasional rather than guaranteed. You stop showing up to every invitation. You stop being the person who never says no. You start being the person whose appearance at an event makes it an event. Not because you're performing importance, because you've actually become selective about where your energy goes, and people feel the difference immediately. Your validation becomes rare. Where before you complimented, encouraged, and affirmed people constantly, now your approval is genuinely uncommon. And when you do give it, it lands with the weight of a verdict from a judge, not the cheap praise of a fan. Because people have learned you don't hand it out. Scarcity, as we've already established, creates value. Every single time. The darkest, most powerful shift of all, you become opaque. You stop explaining yourself. You stop defending your decisions. You stop justifying your time. You stop narrating your life to people who never earned the access. When someone asks why you didn't respond, you say, "I wasn't available." Nothing more. No elaborate story, no apologetic build-up. A fact, delivered flatly, and the silence after it does more to establish your new status than 1,000 words could. Here's the part that sits uncomfortably, and you need to hear it anyway. The people who have treated you like you don't matter, they never saw you as a person. They saw you as a function, as a role, as the reliable one, the nice one, the one who would absorb and never demand. When you stop playing that role, they won't see a new, more complete version of you and admire it. They'll panic. Because the function they were using you for has suddenly stopped working, and their panic will take many forms. Anger, guilt-tripping, sudden declarations of how much they care about you, accusations that you've changed, claims that they don't recognize you anymore. None of that is love reasserting itself. That's the addiction reacting to being cut off. Their addiction, reacting to being cut off. And your job in that moment is to stand in the storm and hold, to not react, to not soften, to not rush back into your old role because the guilt feels unbearable. Because on the other side of their panic is the first moment, maybe in your entire relationship with them, that they will actually see you as a human being with power and not a resource with legs. That's the phantom protocol in its full expression. Present but unreachable, warm but unpredictable, available but not guaranteed. The silhouette of who you once were, with the gravitational pull of someone who has finally stopped begging to be chosen. One last thing before we close this out. Every morning starting tomorrow, I want you to ask yourself one question. Who am I overgiving to that hasn't earned it? Not the big dramatic relationships, the small ones. The co-worker you overhelp, the family member you overforgive, the friend you over-explain yourself to, the person you over-text. Find one, just one. And for today, for this one day, give them 50% less. No announcement, no speech, just less response, less warmth, less of you. That's the first brick, and you'll lay it every single day. Before you realize it, you'll look up and discover you've built an entire fortress out of reclaimed energy. A fortress no manipulator can breach. A fortress the chronically entitled have no map to. A fortress from which your genuine affection, the rare kind, can finally be given to people who actually deserve it. That's who you're becoming. And the process starts the moment this video ends. You came into this video carrying a specific kind of pain, the pain of being the one who gave everything and got nothing, the pain of watching less loyal, less generous, less caring people collect the love and respect you thought your loyalty would buy you, the pain of suspecting, deep down, that something was fundamentally wrong with the formula you'd been running your entire life on. Now you know what was wrong. The formula itself, the whole premise. You were taught that love is earned through giving. Carl Jung and every serious student of dark psychology since discovered the opposite. Love, in the way human beings actually wire it, isn't earned through giving. It's earned through scarcity, through strategic emotional detachment, through the cultivated weight of a person whose presence can't be taken for granted. You've been the overgiving martyr, a role society rewarded with applause and then quietly drained into nothing. Today, the martyr dies, and in its place, something new stands up. The withheld sovereign, the high-value phantom, the person who has reclaimed every ounce of energy they were hemorrhaging, and now distributes that energy like a king distributing land. Rarely, selectively, and only to those who have demonstrated they can be trusted with it. The world has been feeding on you. Today, it starves. If this hit you in a place most content never reaches, if you felt something shift in you during these last 30 minutes, do one thing before you leave. Drop a comment, 2 words. Starve them, not as a threat, as a declaration that you're done feeding people who've treated your generosity as weakness. A declaration that from today forward, your energy becomes rare, and rareness is what the world will have to earn. And if you're serious, if what you just heard isn't going to be another video you watched and forgot, but the actual beginning of a different way of existing, then subscribe. This channel isn't entertainment. It's a library of forbidden strategy. An alliance of minds who have decided that being used is no longer an acceptable price for being kind. Every video is another cut against the conditioning, Every concept is another layer of the fortress, and the people gathering here, the silent strategists, the sovereigns in training, they're the only community on this platform committed to the hard, unglamorous, necessary work of becoming psychologically untouchable. You belong here, but only if you're willing to walk the path. And don't close this tab yet. The next video is already waiting on screen, and it may be the most important one you'll ever watch. In our next transmission, we expose the predator hiding behind empathy, the dark empath, the single most dangerous personality type on Earth, and the exact mask that has almost certainly been worn by someone who has drained you dry. You don't want to miss it. I'll see you there. See what others miss. Know what others fear. Become who others can't.